Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. ABP, Snowbird Brown reveals Ami in hospital, couldn't breathe. Alaskan bush people star Snowbird Brown just revealed some distressing news for fans of the show. She created a new video and says that mother Ami Brown has been admitted to the hospital, and Snowbird seemed really emotional about the matter. Here is what the ABP star said is wrong with Ami Brown, and what is going on right now with the family in Washington. Snowbird Brown says Ami Brown admitted to hospital. Alaskan bush people star Ami Brown has not had an easy time lately in Washington. She and her husband Billy moved from Alaska to Washington to get closer to the hospitals since she had her cancer battle a few years back. However, they are still not close to good hospitals, and Billy died after a stroke when he couldn't get to help on time. Snowbird Brown recently had her own cancer scare when she had to have large tumors removed from her ovaries. She had to travel a distance from their mountain home to have surgery to remove them. Bear Brown and his wife Raven are expecting their third child, and they have gone to Texas to be closer to a NICU hospital since there is also not one close to their home in Washington. Now Snowbird Brown says that Ami had to be hospitalized. In the Instagram video, she said there has been a bad cold going around right now in Washington. Snowbird said she suffered through the cold and it was bad. She wasn't able to keep anything down at all. Sadly, Ami, 60, has the same cold and is in the hospital fighting it. Alaskan bush people's Ami Brown battling pneumonia in hospital. Snowbird Brown posted the video on Saturday night. She said people have been asking about her mother. This is when she revealed that Ami had been admitted to the hospital. The good news is that Snowbird said that Ami is okay right now. Snowbird talked about the cold going around and said Ami had gotten pretty bad. On Friday they had to take Ami to the ER, and it turned out that the cold had turned into a bad case of pneumonia. Because there is not a good hospital close to them, they took her to the closest, fairly large town, and Ami is still in the hospital right now. Snowbird said Ami is on antibiotics with the nurses and doctors caring for her. Sadly, Snowbird can't see her mom right now since she is still battling the cold. She doesn't want to go and worsen things since she is also sick. She said that Ami was doing better and she would keep people updated. Snowbird Brown paced anxiously outside the hospital room, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. The sterile smell of antiseptic and the harsh fluorescent lights only heightened her anxiety. She looked through the small window on the door, watching as the medical team worked diligently around her mother, Ami Brown. It was a scene she had hoped never to witness. Ami had always been the rock of the Brown family, a pillar of strength and resilience in the face of countless challenges. Today she looked fragile and vulnerable, her breathing labored and her face pale. The sight was almost too much for Snowbird to bear. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, closing her eyes in a silent prayer. It had all started earlier that morning. Snowbird had woken up to the sound of Ami's coughing, a deep, rasping sound that echoed through their cabin. She had rushed to her mother's side, finding her struggling to catch her breath. The panic in Ami's eyes was something Snowbird would never forget. Without wasting a moment, she had called for an ambulance. Now, as she stood outside the hospital room, waiting for news, Snowbird felt a crushing sense of helplessness. She was used to being strong, to facing challenges head-on, but this was different. This was her mother, the woman who had given her life, who had taught her everything she knew about survival and resilience. Seeing her in such a vulnerable state was heart-wrenching. The door to the room opened and a doctor stepped out. Snowbird straightened up, her heart racing even faster. The doctor's expression was serious, but there was a hint of reassurance in his eyes. "Snowbird," he said softly. "Yes, that's me," she replied, her voice trembling. The doctor offered a small smile. "Your mother is stable for now. She had a severe asthma attack which made it difficult for her to breathe. We've given her medication to help open up her airways, and she's responding well." Snowbird let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her like a wave, but the worry was still there. gnawing at the edges of her mind. "Can I see her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor nodded. "Of course, she's asking for you." Snowbird stepped into the room, her eyes immediately finding her mother's. Ami looked exhausted, but there was a warmth in her gaze that reassured Snowbird. She rushed to her side, taking her hand and squeezing it gently. "Mom, you scared me," she said, her voice breaking. Ami managed a weak smile. "I'm sorry, Bird. I didn't mean to." Tears welled up in Snowbird's eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to stay strong for her mother. "It's okay, Mom. You're going to be okay." They sat in silence for a while, the beeping of the monitors and the hum of the machines the only sounds in the room. Snowbird held her mother's hand tightly, drawing strength from the simple act of being there for her. "I've been through a lot in my life," Ami said softly, breaking the silence. "But nothing scares me more than the thought of leaving you kids behind." Snowbird shook her head. "Don't talk like that, Mom. You're not going anywhere. We need you." Ami's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "I know, Bird, and I'm going to fight with everything I have. For you, for the family." Snowbird felt a surge of determination. They had faced so many challenges together as a family, and they would face this one too. They were the Browns, and they were nothing if not resilient. The next few days were a blur of doctors, nurses, and medical jargon. Snowbird stayed by her mother's side, watching over her and making sure she had everything she needed. Ami's condition slowly improved, her breathing becoming steadier and her strength returning bit by bit. Throughout it all, Snowbird couldn't help but marvel at her mother's strength. Despite everything she had been through, Ami remained positive, her spirit unbroken. It was a testament to the kind of woman she was, and it inspired Snowbird to be just as strong. Finally, the day came when the doctors announced that Ami could go home. Snowbird felt a rush of relief and joy, hugging her mother tightly. They packed up their things and left the hospital, ready to return to their cabin and the life they loved. As they drove home, Snowbird glanced over at her mother, who was gazing out the window with a thoughtful expression. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" she'd asked. Ami smiled. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am to have you, Bird. You've been my rock through all of this." Snowbird felt a lump in her throat. "I'm just glad you're okay, Mom. We need you more than you know." Ami reached over and squeezed her hand. "And I need you too, Bird, more than you know." They drove in comfortable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. Snowbird knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because that's what family did. They supported each other, loved each other, and stayed strong for each other, no matter what. As they pulled up to their cabin, Snowbird felt a sense of peace wash over her. They were home, and her mother was going to be okay. It was all she could have hoped for. They stepped inside, greeted by the familiar warmth and comfort of their home. Snowbird helped her mother to the couch, making sure she was comfortable before sitting down beside her. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," Ami said, her eyes sparkling with determination. Snowbird nodded. "And we'll tackle it one step at a time, just like we always do." Ami smiled, a look of pride in her eyes. "That's my girl." Snowbird leaned back, feeling a sense of contentment settle over her. They had faced a terrifying ordeal and come out stronger for it. And no matter what the future held, she knew they would face it together, as a family. Because in the end, that was what mattered most. Family.